Hi everybody, it's Laura from Green Tree. Today we're talking chocolate. Now I know we tackled chocolate versus carob once already, but today we're going to talk about chocolate specifically, how it's made, what the listing of ingredients on bars mean, and what those little percentages actually mean. I got a new little microphone, so hopefully you guys are going to get less background noise, but this is the first time trying it, so if you notice anything weird with the audio, let me know and I'll try and watch for comments, okay? Alright, so first we're going to start by just going back over really quickly how chocolate is actually made. I addressed this once before, but chocolate is like a little pod. It looks almost like a cross between a starfruit and an acorn squash that grows on a particular type of tree. Now, these pods have sort of like a fleshy outer layer and they have beans in the middle. They take these beans out and they cover them up. It can be done in a number of different ways. Traditionally, it'd be covered with leaves like from the trees themselves, and these beans are allowed to ferment for a while. That's what brings out the flavor that we really know as chocolate. Without that fermentation step, it's really a very bitter, chalky kind of food. So once this fermentation has happened, these beans are dried and the shells are removed and they're chopped. That's when you end up with something called cacao nibs. So we actually have these in the store, so I'm going to show you. This is what they look like once they're all chopped up already. They are almost similar in texture to a coffee bean, but when you chew them, you can feel that they do get a little bit softer and smoother in your mouth, and that's because these still contain fats. So the cocoa nibs are then ground and they are made into something that's called cocoa mass. Now, cocoa mass still has all the constituent parts of chocolate in it, and the most common way that that's used in chocolate bars is you will see something listed as chocolate liqueur, and that is melted cocoa mass, which is ground cocoa nibs subjected to heat until they turn into a liquid. That's what chocolate or cocoa liqueur is. So that is a blend, like I said, of chocolate solids and chocolate fats. So I'm going to show you what those look like. So chocolate solids, if you were to separate this out, that's basically cocoa powder. This is the drier, finer part that's left over if you separate the cocoa butter out of cocoa mass. So this is cocoa butter. I'm actually gonna, here, let me see if I can show you this a little bit better. So you can see cocoa butter really looks a lot like white chocolate or even a little like soap. You can't smell it, but this smells so amazingly chocolatey. This is the part that makes chocolate feel smooth and melty in your mouth. Now, when chocolate is actually made into a candy or a bar, there'll usually be a blend of cocoa mass, cocoa liqueur, and solids and fats. So the reason that they do that, especially in higher percentage bars, I'm going to give you an example here. So this is an 88% chocolate bar from Equal Exchange. This is actually very smooth in your mouth, but that's because, I guess you guys can't see this because it's backwards, but the first ingredient is cocoa liqueur and the second ingredient is cocoa butter. If you have a really high percentage bar like this and you don't add extra of this the cocoa butter, the cocoa fats, back into the bar, it'll be really chalky and dry. So that's why baking cocoa has that stiffer, like drier, almost waxy texture to it, because they're not adding in extra cocoa butter to make it smooth and delightful like they do for the bars. So what exactly is that percentage talking about on these bars? So you'll see that one was 88%. Then we've got sweet little guys like this. This is a milk chocolate from Theo, and this is only 45%. So what that actually is referring to is the total amount of cocoa mass in the bar. That is a blend of the cocoa liqueur, the cocoa butter, and the cocoa solids. So you can have any mixture of those, and that's what your percentage is. So in this case, this bar is 45% cocoa, the other a blend of different kinds of cocoa products, and the other 55% is milk and sugar. So that's why milk chocolate is so much sweeter and often creamier than the higher percentage chocolates. It's because there's a higher percentage of other ingredients in the bar. Now, besides adding back in extra cocoa butter to get a smoother texture, or extra cocoa solids to get more of that intense caffeinated kick, another thing that they can do when making chocolate is to treat the cocoa mass a little bit differently. And that's something you'll see with Stoneground chocolate. So the best way that I can describe this is, instead of making the cocoa mass as fine as possible and then melting it into the cocoa liqueur, what they're doing is leaving a portion of those nibs coarse, like you would, almost like a cornmeal texture, and that's what's going into these Stoneground chocolates. So you're actually getting tiny little cornmeal sized particles of these cocoa nibs still in your chocolate, so it gives it a very unique texture. A lot of people would describe it as grainy, but it's not grainy in a bad way, because once that hits the heat of your mouth and you start chewing it, it does soften up and melt into a smooth chocolatey texture. It does tend to have more of a fruity kind of fermented flavor that you'll get when you're eating like a cocoa nib or a higher percentage of cocoa, just because there's more of that raw product in the bar. So today, if you decide to stop in, I will be sampling this Stoneground chocolate. This is a 70%, so this is dark. Oh, and that's another little thing. Most chocolates over 55% are considered dark, but the flavor can vary so much in that dark range, like from 55 to 100, depending on the type of sugar that's added, the amount of fat that's blended in, whether or not there's milk included. Because you could really have a milk chocolate that's pretty dark. It's just not a combination that you see very often, because that milk takes up part of the mass of the bar just the way that sugar would. And if you want to balance that out and still keep in a good amount of sugar and add the milk, you're going to have less cocoa solids, and that's why milk chocolates tend to be a lower percentage. So we're going to be doing the Stoneground. We're going to be doing this 88% strong, smooth, equal exchange chocolate. We're going to have Hazelnut Crunch, which is a milk chocolate from Theo. Theo's a great company, by the way. They do a lot of community building things that they give back to with their profits. And a cinnamon horchata milk chocolate, also from Theo. Horchata is actually a rice beverage. Usually you'll find it in like Mexico and South America. So this bar actually has crisp brown rice in it. And I think that's part of the reason they call it a horchata bar. So there you go. That's a little bit of a primer on chocolate, how it's made, what some of those numbers mean. And if you decide you want to try some of these, come in and see me. I'll be doing this till about 5. Happy Monday, everybody.